Also, at the House of Representatives, lawmakers called on the federal government to halt the rehabilitation of convicted terrorists, insisting resources should instead be directed towards supporting victims of terrorism. Proceedings later turned rowdy over a proposal to invite President Bola Tinubu to explain the alleged suspension of zonal intervention and constituency projects. National Assembly correspondent Jake Adesa has more.
For more than a decade, Nigerians have endured the devastating impact of kidnapping for ransom and other violent crimes. Available data indicate that an estimated 2.23 trillion naira was paid as ransom between 2021 and 2025. The figures have raised fresh concerns in the House of Representatives as lawmakers launched an investigation into how Nigeria's financial system is being exploited to finance kidnapping and other criminal activities. Lawmakers warned that weaknesses in the country's financial intelligence architecture are enabling terrorism financing and could further expose Nigeria to sanctions, including continued grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force. They also raised concerns over the alleged use of point-of-sale operators, bureau de change operators, and cryptocurrency platforms to launder ransom payments.
Concerned that criminals and terrorist networks continue to exploit the formal and informal financial systems, including bureau de change operators, cryptocurrency platform, trade-based money laundering schemes to launder ransom proceeds and integrate them into legitimate economy.
The House also strongly opposed the rehabilitation of convicted terrorists, arguing that such programs undermine justice for victims and could embolden criminal groups.
Rehabilitating terrorists cannot at whatever level of influence be encouraged. But let us do our needful by taking care of the victims.
I am not in support of the prayers to the extent that we want to further ask that that provision of the law be enforced against parents and other loved ones of victims of kidnapping in Nigeria until, as a country, we have a security system that is able to go after kidnappers and free kidnapped victims.
In addition to not paying ransom, I don't believe and I don't see any rationale behind rehabilitating a criminal that is killing people.
Earlier, plenary turned rowdy following attempts by some lawmakers to have President Bola Tinubu appear before the House over the alleged suspension of payments for zonal intervention and constituency projects nationwide. Raising a matter of personal explanation, Delta lawmaker Benedict Etanabene urged the House to invite the President to clarify the issue.
This House to agree that we summon Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria together with his financial team to please come to this House in line with the provision of the Constitution to brief Nigerians exactly what is happening, because the stories are not complimentary at all.
Similarly, Abia lawmaker Alex Ikweche, in a motion, expressed concern over delays in the release of appropriated funds, outstanding payments to contractors, and the slow implementation of the 2025 and 2026 budgets. Although he called for urgent government action, some lawmakers argued that his motion did not include a proposal to invite the President, triggering a heated exchange on the floor. The intervention of the Speaker restored order. The House subsequently urged the Federal Ministry of Finance, the Budget Office, the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, and the Central Bank of Nigeria to expedite the release and cash backing of appropriated funds. The lawmakers also called for the settlement of verified contractual liabilities and demanded details of the utilization of approved borrowings. The Speaker, however, ruled that the proposal to invite President Tinubu was unparliamentary. The House further called for a review of the Treasury circular to eliminate bureaucratic bottlenecks, delaying the execution of constituency projects. Joke Adsa, TVC News, Abuja.
Let's bring in political affairs analyst Dr. Jide Ojo, who joins me to discuss some developments from the floor of the Great Chamber earlier today. We'll talk about the motion seeking to summon President Tinubu shortly. But do you think we have really identified what drives low budget implementation despite annual appropriations?
Thank you very much, Nifemi. It rankles that this has been a perennial problem. The current expenditure, but when it comes to the capital projects, the issue becomes a very sticky one. And it's very, like you rightly asked, I don't think we've gotten to the root cause of what may have been responsible for this. We do know, and I can hazard a guess that National Assembly itself is part of the problem. The executive will bring a budget, say 50 trillion. You pad it with additional 5-7 trillion. When the executive that brings it knew that this is what they can afford to spend for a particular budget cycle. And until when this agreement is made between what let's have a unified budget inclusive of the zonal intervention fund, so that whatever the president is bringing to the National Assembly is actually the bulk sum that the National Assembly will work with. All year, we have padded budget, more money being included in budget without project designs, without even feasibility studies and all of that. But that is just one leg of the explanation. The bigger challenge is that we have revenue shortfall. Perennially, we have never had the optimum budget. We never had a budget that revenue and expenditure are in equilibrium. So we always have more expenditure than revenue. And when there is a shortfall, it then means that the Office of Accountant General and Ministry of Finance, we have to play with how to ration the available revenue. But it is also very concerning that particularly we've not been able to prioritize our security and defense sector. I had it from grapevine source that, for instance, the budget for Ministry of Defense, out of the lion's share of the budget for 2025, they only received about 20% capital expenditure. And we know what constitutes capital expenditure for Ministry of Defense. You are talking of arms and ammunition procurement. You are talking of welfare. We are talking of, those things that really the military needs to keep you and I safe. So if it is true that only a fraction of Ministry of Defense budget for 2025 has been released to them, it then explains why we have a rebound and resurgence of insecurity in most parts of the country.
It brings us to the question, who should be held accountable? Even though the Speaker threw out the motion to summon President Tinubu and his financial team, it raises an important constitutional question. If budget implementation is carried out by accounting officers and MDAs, who should be held accountable if there is reported sustained underperformance in this regard?
The buck stops at the level at the table of Minister of Finance. And now, if you recall, even when Mr. Wale was the substantive Minister of Finance, and Mrs. Doris Nzuka was the Minister of State, the same National Assembly invited the Joe towards the end of last year to ask that many contractors are complaining that monies have not been paid to them. The MDAs, ministry, department, and agencies are saying that they have not received their capital goods. So the buck is at the level of the Minister of Finance. And now we have a young man at the saddle after the exit of Mr. Wale. And I think he's doing his level best. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele will have to be held accountable for this issue, because for contractors, Federal Executive Council have approved the sum of 1 trillion for disbursement to local contractors. But what we learned from good authority is that additional certificate of verification and completion of projects is not being required from these contractors, which is not delaying. And many of these people went to borrow money from banks to do these projects. And so they are running on a compound interest. So I think the Minister of Finance, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele or Dr. Taiwo Oyedele, needs to really come clean about what actually is the problem.
Indeed.
Because he's the one that knows how much is in the coffers of the federal government and how much goes for recurrent and overhead, as well as service-wide votes, as well as the capital expenditure.
But Dr. Joe, is there a sense to which today's controversy exposes a deeper problem with legislative oversight? Is the National Assembly doing enough to monitor budget implementation throughout the year instead of reacting only when performance falls short?
They are not doing enough, and that's why the cacophony of voices at the plenary today in the House of Reps is needless. Because if they have done their oversight, they will have known what the problems are, rather than playing the ostrich and saying, let's invite the president. The president, yes, the president gives order. For instance, the president has approved at some point 1.5 trillion for payment of local contractors. Then the Federal Executive Council met and said, okay, 1 trillion in the first tranche to be paid to these local contractors. But this is July. These contractors, majority of them has not been paid. So it is the oversight of the National Assembly, and there are several committees they have. In fact, the dozens of committees, many of them not even meeting. And if they have done their proper oversight, they will have known the peculiar problems of each of the ministries, departments, and agencies that they are oversighting. And they will have been able to report back to the House or to the Senate what the challenges are in truth and in deed. But I think the first point of entry is to invite Mr. Taiwo Oyedele to come and explain, as they did with Mr. Wale when he was the Minister of Finance, to ask Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, what is the challenge? Now we have more money coming because of the Middle East crisis, where the president has borrowed so much from bilateral and multilateral sources. So why are we still having revenue challenges implementing the capital expenditure of our budget?
Good place to leave it. Dr. Jide Ojo, political affairs analyst, thank you so much for your insight on the news tonight.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Do have a great evening.